My guest today is issuing a serious warning. The stock market is not a game. It's a serious thing for serious people. And we're going to be speaking with Marc Cohodes today here on StansberryInvestor.com. It's a special treat to have him on the show. He's considered one of the greatest short sellers on the planet of our time. He's made a living and a name for himself going after, as he says, the bad guys. He's exposed about, what is it, Mark, 50 to 70 frauds?
Yeah, at least over time. Sure. I mean, I'm old, Danielle. I mean, I'm 60, so
60 is the new 30, Mark. But yeah, you've put a lot of powerful people behind bars. We're going to talk about your life, which is fascinating. You live on a chicken farm. I want to learn more about that. But you've also gone up against Goldman Sachs and the greatest or most famous investor of all time, Warren Buffett. No small feat. But first, I want to talk about Reddit, Wall Street Bets. Yes, it made for a great media story that people would say it's old news now, it's come and went. But you say, hold on a second, it's really exposed an ugly underbelly here. And there's important lessons that we have to take because this can happen again.
it can happen. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I enjoy working with you guys. I enjoyed the conference. I think it was, I don't even know how many Octobers ago in Las Vegas.
Thank you.
Seems it's like a time warp.
Well,
Yeah, it's I think what's obvious here is obviously wrong. The Reddit movement, if you will, I think is here to stay. I mean, I think it's really at the essence, it's a good thing that individuals have a mind of their own, that they're not told what to do, that people can think for themselves. The whole GameStop thing is not really a Reddit phenomenon. I think there were some big forces behind the scenes who were astroturfing on Reddit to get people fired up. But I think there was big money involved in these various squeezes. And it really happened because Melvin and others, his cohorts, were very over leveraged in a bunch of names. And once grass fire started, it turned into a forest fire, turned into an event that basically burned a county or a state. And it's not going to go away. It's not going to go away anytime soon. But the problem is rooted at the Citadels of the world, at the SACs of the world, at the over-leveraged hedge funds of the world. And it's very easy to make shorts the victim. Shorts are the victim when the market goes up. Shorts are the victim when the market goes. They're to blame when the market goes down. They're to blame when it goes up. They're always to blame. That's it. That's a very easy target, but it takes work in terms of getting behind the scenes of what really went on, the dynamics of what went on, and there needs to be huge change made so it doesn't happen again, so people don't lose it all.
And correct me if I'm wrong, your thesis is that, firms like Point72 and Melvin Capital are creating systemic risk. So let's talk about the risks here and what we can do to protect ourselves.
Well, they're creating systemic risk along with broker dealers, along with Citadel. What people don't understand when the mainstream media talks about hedge fund legends and people's great returns, these returns are on a very leveraged basis. When you look at all these gurus' unleveraged returns, they basically suck. So they use what I would call excessive leverage, which is really 5 to 14 times levered in their portfolio to get these returns. And then the operators make 2 and 20, 3 and 30, 4 and 50, whatever the number is, to make billions and billions and billions. But basically they put the entire financial system at risk. And this is anywhere from Goldman to Citadel to B of A to broker dealers to hedge funds. And my simple solution for all this is you have a too big to fail tax on those kind of players who use excessive leverage. And there should be a huge tax on all these high frequency traders, because this whole concept of pay for order flow, pay for this to give people zero commissions, it's a bait and switch game. It's extraordinarily dangerous. It's not competitive. People don't worry about anything on the way up. They only worry about it and it gets publicity on the way down. But with the market at all-time highs and people feeling really good, except for everyone affected by the pandemic, it's time sort of to fix it once and for all. And it's no different right now than what's happening in the South with all these power failures. Weaknesses in the system aren't exposed unless there's an incident. And the time to affix the power grid or natural gas distribution was when everything was fine, not after you have a freeze and people will die or freeze to death or whatever. The time to fix and to rid the world of these over leveraged players is sort of now. And it's largely ignored,
Absolutely.
and it's easy to scapegoat the 2.5 people left who actually short stocks for a living.
So Mark, educate the audience about why buying a stock merely because it has high short interest is a very dangerous and bad idea.
Well, it's a hugely bad idea longer term. It's very simplistic. I mean, the first thing that message boards or chat rooms teach you is about the famous short squeeze, which is buying heavily shorted stocks under the concept that you can push these names up. And then the person who has the negative bet on will be forced to buy it back or lose more money than they've already lost. In the short term, when the market goes straight up and it's extraordinarily speculative, that's been the way to go. I mean, that's been hugely successful for a lot of people, i.e. this GameStop thing, which is why people hear the stories about this fellow with the red tie wrapped around his head taking $10,000 and making 50 million.
Right.
That's fine. And that's like the person who wins the lottery and then everyone goes buys lotto tickets. I mean, that's going to be the exception. There's going to be more bad stories about how people lost it all. And then we get into the blame game. So I always say, and it's worked for me, if you can't explain what you own to a 10th grader or less in a paragraph or less, you probably shouldn't own it, and you sure shouldn't be shorted. And if you use the concept short squeeze in that paragraph, you're asking for what comes your way, both good or bad.
So well put, Mark. And you issue the warning that, look, the stock market is not a game, but with this $2 trillion stimulus about to be set free here, with people about to be getting more checks, they're going to have, as some people say, hey, for a lot of people it's a lifeline, but for some people it is that play money, and they're using it in the stock market, treating it like a casino. So that's why I say, isn't this situation going to happen again?
Well, the funny thing about that quote is I was quoted in the New York Times in April of 2020. That's when I was quoted saying that, and that was sort of right before or the very early stages of the dot-com bubble. So that quote has been pretty timeless, and it worked in 2020. It works in, what are we, 2021? Some way it's still the case, but the stimulus money is meant to help the economy. Now, if you want to go and use it, or you're fortunate enough to get it but don't need it, which is a whole nother subject, be very careful in what you own and know why you own it, rather than play along with this gang warfare, or what they tell you on the Cartoon Network, aka CNBC. You should know what you're in. You should know why you're in. You should have a horizon. You should have an investment mosaic of whether you own a name, a money manager, a mutual fund, and just sort of have a plan. I mean, it sounds Pollyanna-ish, and it sounds aspirational, but to get caught up in crypto or doggy coin or whatever it is, it's very, very dangerous. I mean, people ask me all the time about crypto, and I said, crypto falls in the category where I can't explain it in a paragraph or less. I don't even know. I mean, I know what it is. I don't know how it works. I don't know any of this stuff. So I've never owned a dime's worth of crypto in my life. I mean, it sounds great, and I'm sure a lot of people have done it, and people have made vast fortunes. But unless you can explain it, you probably shouldn't be in it, and you sure shouldn't be in it on borrowed money, and you sure shouldn't be in it on money you can afford, that you can't afford to lose. So it's a real problem, because people now have this fear of missing out, which I guess people call FOMO, and I think the markets by and large are set up to screw the little guy. So I think I would be very, very, very careful here.
The fear of missing out is so tempting. And I had Jim Rogers on last week, and I like what he told me offline. He said there's two people that get burned badly in bubbles: skeptics and believers. So absolutely, you can make money in a bubble, but knowing when to get in and out is
well. What's
what it's all about.
what's important and what I talk about with some of my sophisticated pals is every day you wake up, you at least have to know what game is going on. And you can either play the game, watch the game, but fighting the game right now is deadly. So whatever the game is, know exactly what's going on and why, and figure out how you want to be positioned for the game. Because if you show up with a baseball bat at a football game, you're in real trouble, and you can get yourself in real trouble here. I mean,
So, if you were to apply that to Bitcoin, which every morning we wake up and it's, $2,000, $3,000 higher here, and going back to your point about FOMO, you could see how tempting it is. You don't want to be missing out. If people are talking that it's going to 100,000, 200,000. So when you say you really need to dissect and see the inner layers and understand what's going on, you've said you don't want to touch Bitcoin because you can't sum it up in a sentence. But when you're looking at the
I can't sum it up in a paragraph, a page. I mean, I'd be damned if someone can tell me exactly what Bitcoin is and why you need to play it other than rank speculation and it's some form of corner. If it's some crypto thing created on a computer, why do they have it looking like a gold coin? I mean, it's not a gold coin. I mean, everyone shows Bitcoin is a B over a gold coin. That's exactly what it's not. So I don't get it. And I don't feel bad saying I don't get it. I don't feel bad missing out on it. I don't know what it is. And I'd feel stupid if I lost money on it. And I'd feel unworthy if I made money on it. So if you're a believer, by all means, and you're smarter than me, knock yourself out. But this concept of being in it just because it's going up is a bad bet. Tends not to work over time. Now in a mania, maybe it works. And again, it's okay if you make money. It's okay if you make money the wrong way. You don't have to be intellectually honest. Money is money. And but I would suggest people be very careful. You can speculate. You can speculate that Tesla's going to go from 800 to 1800 because he's going to merge in SpaceX or do whatever, and he's the smartest man on earth. That's fine. At least you have a point of view. I don't have to agree or disagree with you, but at least you have a point of view. But just don't get caught up in the wave because there's a wave. There's always something that comes along that makes a whole lot more sense at some point or day in the future. And these are dangerous, volatile, and highly leveraged times, and people need to be careful.
Very well said, Mark. At the beginning, I said you've gone up against Goldman Sachs, Warren Buffett. You've put a lot of people in jail. How do you sleep at night?
Well, I sleep great. I mean, I'm kind of a jittery fellow and I'm a light sleeper. I sleep well. I mean, people want me off the earth. There's no doubt about that. But I speak truth to power. I use my own name. I'm not afraid of anyone. I don't back down from much. But I pick my fights, and I pick my fights carefully. And my Medex fraudster, Parker Petit, who was convicted of security fraud, he gets sentenced, I think, in about a week. I can't wait to see his ass go to jail. He wrote a letter to the judge blaming me and short and distort and all sorts of bullshit, and he's not even sorry for what he did. But I'm pleased that he's been brought to justice. I'm pleased on behalf of the people at the company who he abused, destroyed their lives. I'm very happy that there's justice. But the problem is it becomes so dangerous and so difficult, and there's so little ground cover right now. It's I'm not short any stocks right now, especially of frauds, because the environment is dangerous. I know what the game is, and the game is not conducive to picking on guys. partly because of the Reddit phenomena, partly because the government doesn't care, partly because we have an SEC that doesn't care, and partly because unless you can get proper mechanisms in place where funky companies don't go up between 2 and 15 times in 10 days, I'm not I'm not here to try to lose money in a game. Again, that's back to the game term. That's impossible to win as a short. Now, people and wise asses say that if he says it's not time to be short, isn't that the sign of a top? Well, I said this last April. I've said it all along through the whole, whatever you want to call this, some form of bubble. And people need to be careful. Topically, it sounds great to be short EV or hydro or Bitcoin or blockchain or what have you. But yeah, it's a bubble. There's no doubt about that. But these bubbles can get very, very large and things can get very exponential before they stop. And I'm not interested in getting run over. I mean, it's not, I've been there and done that when I was a whole lot younger, and it's no fun.
How much steam do you think is still left in this market?
I have no clue. I mean, you brought up the $1 million question, which is the stimulus. And the one thing, I mean, the bullish part of life is people for the past year have had nothing to do. I mean, nothing to do. And if you're fortunate enough to have a legitimate job, whether it's financial services or medical or service or VC or even manufacturing, your business is really good. If you're in restaurants, hotel, travel, personal service, life for you really sucks. But those people tend to not to play in the stock market. So if you're well-to-do, like the people watching this, you've saved a lot of money because you've done nothing. You haven't gone traveling, you haven't gone to Europe, you haven't been on a cruise, you haven't been on vacation. You've really, other than your home, you've spent money on nothing. So people have savings and people have a lot of money and they've made a lot of money in stocks. So when things get back to normal, whatever that looks like, there's going to be a whole lot of money being spent on the economy, which I don't think is in numbers. And the government, they're going to be spending a lot of money. So the spend side of it, the earning side of it is going to be big. Wild card is what happens to inflation and rates. And the government wants to keep rates low. So they don't really care about inflation and they want to keep the stock market high. Now, all this is artificial, but I'm not one to say what exactly is going to come by to slow that down. So I'm just, I just go by individual things and I try to stay out of trouble and I try not to get too entrenched with macro. I just try to think straightforward. There's plenty of people out there who can comment on gold or the market or rates or inflation. That's just not my bag. I've never tried to do that. I've never claimed I'm any good at it. I just try to find names and think of things that'll go up. And if someone wants trouble, I'll try to dish some up for them.
So well said, Mark. We know the Cohodeses of the world. We know the Carruthers. There's few of you doing what you do.
There's going to be, sadly, there's going to be less is the aftermath of this. I mean, I think my generation of guys is essentially through. I think I was talking to a few of them last week. I think when all the dust settles, there's going to be less than $1 billion worldwide dedicated to being short stocks. So that's really sad because a guy like Carruthers, I mean, he single-handedly eventually gave the story to Roddy Boyd. He exposed INSIS, which killed tens of thousands of people with their fentanyl drug. If not for him, the number would have been hundreds of thousands of people and probably would still be going on. So the people who expose bad folks, guys who will end up behind bars. I mean, Carruthers put all that INSIS crew behind bars. I mean, Roddy Boyd had a hand in it as well. I mean, these people are going to be out of business. These people are going to be gone because you can't have a business doing this because your investor or investors has no tolerance of names going up 2 to 10 times, getting GameStop, if you will. GameStop will be a verb. And until there are mechanisms in place to ensure this can't happen and skeptics have safe harbor, I think it's a dying breed. And basically, without naming names, the bad guys of the world have gotten what they want. They have a very euphoric market, and they've basically put all the skeptics under, and they've put them under through market mechanics. Because if the SEC doesn't care and the government doesn't care, and there's so few people in the mainstream media left to write about this kind of stuff, I mean, everyone, when you have all offense and no defense, you can score an awful lot of points. So I think all the defenders are essentially done. I mean, they're just done, which is sad to me. But once again, you know, when they blame the shorts, most people are happy that there's no shorts. There's no natural advocates for the skeptics or the people who go after fraudsters. That's for sure.
I think there's a real danger if you guys are the dying breed. You know, we need you in the market universe, just like we need bees in our world. You need it.
Well, as I would say to anyone, I'd rather be a live coward than a dead hero. I mean, the problem, again, the GameStop type of move, or the AMC move, or there's a whole host of others of these various companies. No one can set up in any form of risk parameter a name going up 3 to 15 times in a week. It's just it can't happen. And until changes are made, it can happen again and again and again. And usually if I get burnt or injured once, I don't want to try to do it again. So if I can learn from mistakes I've made 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, I don't want to make them as a 60-year-old fellow, that's for sure.
Marc, bring it home for us. We have a lot of investors actively listening to every word you're saying here. You know, what would you want to say here in just some wrapping comments?
These are fascinating times on one hand, because if you subscribe to this service, you're A, smart, and B, you pay attention and you're careful. There's a lot of information out there to digest, to figure out what you want to do or how you want to go. It's all available. I used to say that people spend more time researching the restaurant they want to go to than researching their stock. But since people aren't going to restaurants anymore, I have to come up with something new. So you really need to do the work for yourself. If you believe in something that you see or a trend you see, by all means, jump on it. Don't worry if a stock's acting good or bad or what it's done. None of that matters. You have as good a shot as any pro. Just think for yourself and just don't get caught up in the FOMO or the wave or the flavor du jour or whatever it is, because whoever got you in it, when it decides to go south or wrong, they won't get you out. They'll pretend it didn't exist. So my main thing is I encourage everyone who can think to think for themselves. If you can't think for yourself, you know, read things carefully, and if it makes sense to you, you know, by all means play. But they're dangerous times. Not that you can't make or lose a ton of money. Just know exactly what you're in and why. I think that's the main thing. And by all means, don't use leverage. Don't use leverage at any cost. Markets are volatile enough. The returns are out there. If you get it right, you don't need extra juice behind your bet. So that's my main thought. Amen
to that, Marc. Beautifully said. I'll leave you to your chickens. How many do you have there on your farm?
I have fewer and fewer. They're getting old. I've had too many fires around here the past years, and the fires or the smoke gets them a little crazy. We've had a few coyotes. So, I mean, the chickens take up too much time. I gotta keep my head on a swivel and all this other nonsense going on.
All
but
right.
I appreciate you having me. Maybe one day, again, when there's conferences, I'll show up in Vegas again one of these.
Hey, absolutely.
One of these years.
We'd love to have you back at the Stansberry conference. I appreciate your time, Marc. You're a legend. And thank you for joining me here on StansberryInvestor.com.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for watching. We'll have much more for you, StansberryInvestor.com. In the meantime, share us where you watch us. We're on all the social media platforms. Thank you for watching. I'm Daniela Cambone.